Like myself, I slept with a man before. I have no shame in saying that, but I am straight. Do you know many people who take puberty blockers? Like, you getting hair plugs is not going to change your life. Now, however, the sex change is. That is damaging, psychologically damaging. Sorry, it sucks to say this. Hello, everybody. Yeah, we're going to be reacting to a Jubilee video. Is pride still necessary? Conservative versus liberal. So let's hop right in, I guess. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
The gay community is over-sexualized. Can the agreeers please step forward?
Okay, I gotta ask, is it even gay for the man to wear a dress, or is that a trans thing? Like, realistically speaking.
The gay community, because, you know, it's based off of our
Why
sexual
did you
attraction.
do
it
that
has a very
skirt with those
easy
boots?
time
That
going
looks
into a space
tacky.
that's all about sex. To me, being gay is a lot more than who I sleep with, you know?
Yeah.
It's an experience from when I grew up. The movement used to be about love, but then you go to a pride parade.
That's what I was asking earlier, though. Like, why is he wearing a skirt if he's... Are people that are gay that fruity that they wear a skirt, or is this like a transgender thing? Like, I'm not even trying to sound rude. I'm just saying, like, you know...
I think it's just more, why the fuck do the clothes have to be gendered? If your ass looks good in a skirt, it looks good in a skirt.
No, I get that much. I'm just asking for posterity's sake. Like, asking what someone might want to ask. You know what I mean? Like, what's the premise of the skirt if being
Or
gay
maybe it's
is
just
not
that
something that you need to display on clothing-wise? You know what I mean? Go ahead.
Either going at it with the mindset of like, fuck the gender rules, I'm doing my own thing. Or he's going at it with a more like, you know, I'm finally feeling comfortable with myself and my legs look amazing.
Well, they are shaved, but
Fuck it, why not?
I'm just... It's just a food for thought for someone like me who I like to be inquisitive, so it's just one of those things.
And you're seeing old men with their genitals out.
I think everybody has a right to like express their sexuality in the ways that they do it. So on those grounds, I'm not like offended by these old people like doing what they're doing. But I do agree with that. I think like one of the biggest challenges when I was coming out to my dad, who's Muslim, it was like my sexuality.
Walking around with his dick out at Pride. There's not someone being in the leather shit.
Well, actually, there has been a couple of people in the gay pride community that have done BDSM gear, and let's be honest though, some of that BDSM gear is very revealing.
Yeah, some, but that's no different than the straight people that are going around and barely covering clothing.
Let's look at VR chat, for example, something that, you know, we watch these videos for that sake alone. You see a lot of people in very revealing clothing, so it's not that far.
Yeah, I have Abbeys that I don't often wear because of how little clothing they have at a maximum. Like, if the most clothing one of my Abbeys has is like a hoodie that barely goes past like your collarbone, pasties, and a miniskirt that is at best a singular bit of stretchy fabric doing its best around the hips.
So what I mean by that is that just as much as you have the proclivity or the option to wear something as revealing as that in your own private ways, I guess with friends or whatever else, there are people who also say that, you know, I'm gonna gender affirm myself, or I'm going to display my sexuality, and they do wear the BDSM gear. I mean, let's look at all the furries, for example. There's quite a buttload of furries that do wear BDSM gear just casually, and it shows like a big old bulge. Now, you might not be showing cock and balls, but that's the same premise on the pasties and under boob and all this different stuff. Like, sure, you're not showing it, but you're displaying it. And I think that's what they mean by this question, you know, or by presenting the whole grandpa situation.
Well, yeah, but even then, like, regardless of what you're wearing, Pride is about, you aren't, like, you can go to Pride in whatever the fuck you want as long as it's legal, mainly.
Right, but
like,
you still have a situation where some
really
of these...
meant to go out there in a button-down polo and khakis like you just left the golf field with Bob.
No, I get that very much. I do. What I think that, like, again, what they're premising, and I think they're going to be speaking about it here in a second, is the fact that a lot of these new gay pride parades, and not parades, but like gatherings and stuff, are outdoors, and they're not quite essentially putting it out there in a way that is more wholesome, indicative towards children might be walking up and seeing this type of thing, you know?
Not everything's meant to be wholesome. Even with going back to VR chat,
right,
kids are gonna see shit all the time, but it's a space more so primarily meant for adults.
So you're saying
Part of
that
why
we
you-
shouldn't have kids outside in real life? They shouldn't go to school and stuff like that?
Oh no, not at all. That's putting words in my mouth. But some spaces are going to be outright meant for exclusively adults or primarily adults, or at the very least, you know, this is PG-13 at a minimum.
Right, but then when do we classify public spaces to be adult spaces when you say that, for example, they do a concert or a gay pride concert in those town square or park? Like, if they
Because
don't...
most of those normally do have outright walls, gates set up to carve out. The ones that don't, yeah, for sure.
Okay,
But, like,
well, now
most-
you're... well, that's what I mean, though. Now you're starting to put boundaries and limitations to things, which makes sense to do. But we're talking about spaces that don't have this representation, that don't have... This is going to have an NSFW type of feel and atmosphere to it. You know what I mean? Because it's a
Yeah,
public
but things
park.
like Pride is still rather new. Like, a bunch of things are still being new.
I wouldn't-
Rules are being hammered. Like, not new as in like only in the last 5 years, but like even when you say parade, I think of like someone with like a fancied up 18-wheeler covered in peacocks and fireworks. You know, not so much just a bunch of gay dudes walking down a road, which is more like, I don't know. It's like different events have different things, and every event is going to have some sort of extreme, but you can't start looking at the group by only talking about their extremes.
No, of course, you can't talk about just their extremes, the extremes. Well, people do love to point out the extreme parts, or they do like, or they are the loudest, should I say, as well. You know what I mean? Like, even straight people, black people, and all this other different stuff that I guess can be controversial has also been viewed in those extremist ways, even though the premise to begin with was just to spread positivity. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, but I feel like too many people are looking only at the extremes to then use it to justify whether pro or anti whatever the fuck.
Yeah, I can agree on that one.
Being gay isn't just about my sexual lust for other men. It's more about the spiritual connections, the in-depth things. Like, me as a whole complex person, I do think that our experiences and our existence has kind of been trivialized by the over-sexualizations. I don't think it's inherently an evil,
And
but
the over-sexualization is apparent in the apps that we can get. I mean, you can literally have sex on demand, or you could find it in a location wherever you want. Certain businesses are actually keeping doors open because men are having sexual relations in the bathrooms, and that's inappropriate. I mean, we want our too, just like women, and now we can't even have our privacy because a small sect of men
Oh
are doing it
shit,
for us.
I'm dropping
And that was really
things.
frustrating too. When I came out the closet, it was like I had
Okay,
this
I'm good.
innate pressure, like, oh, I have to download Grindr, I have to be super sexualized, and that's really bad on our youth because although, I mean, everyone has sex, I get that, but why is it that our community is so hyper focused on that?
I haven't attended many Pride events because of that reason.
See, that's the question that I pose too, and like, I'm a straight person. We know this. Okay, I'm a straight white man, I guess, or not even white, but just straight, right? I'm multi-ethnicity, so I can't really say I'm anything in particular. Let's be honest, as a whole, right? As a whole society, we don't want to see elderly people fucking on the main street. We don't want to see even kids fucking on the main street. Is it exciting? Sure. We all do it. Fine. That's not the big issue. We don't want to see sexual acts in public all that often. I mean, God forbid we do have... Well, I'm not religious, but I say that a lot. God forbid you're going to have people who are going to do it, and maybe you're hitting your slump and you're fucking sad and depressed because of not having someone, or whatever the fuck the case is, right? You also don't want kids being exposed to these things because you don't want kids to be doing it right off the bat. Granted, they could search for it online, but unless they don't know about it, they're not going to be able to search it. You know what I mean? It's not like...
Well, they're gonna find out about it from school anyway. I don't even mean like in a teaching about sex. I mean their class takes one classmate.
I understand that, and I do, but I feel like that's more natural than, say, for example, just witnessing two dudes or two women, or witnessing two older people fucking duking it out on Main Street, okay? What's going to be more natural? People are going to do it in the confines of their house. They're going to do it maybe in their car or some shit, right? Out in the wild, but they're not going to do it in public spaces, right? right? Atypically. So why do we have to hyper focus on sexualization of certain things in order for us to even overall accept it, you know? Like, for example, their transgenderism, even that's hypersexualized sometimes. I mean, okay, how about this? Instead of worrying about all that, instead of worrying about gay, instead of worrying about transgenderism, let's look at the furry community. How many of them do they say that they do not appreciate the hypersexualization of what they like?
I don't know, because most of the furries I regularly interact with are the horny bastards.
You are not helpful for my example. I have chose the wrong person for this. Okay?
Thomas Gank Engine!
Oh my god, I hate you so much.
I know too many memes! I've spent too much time
I'm
on
just
the
saying
internet.
that there's people that are gonna find a fascination in something and they don't appreciate the hypersexualization of it. Alright? And if we're gonna really collaborate with everybody and get along with everybody, the people who are hypersexual, they need to understand that there's a space and time and place to do that stuff, as well as there is a time and place for people that are not fixated with hypersexuality and stuff like that, and that there's that if they end up walking into those spaces, that's their fault, but vice versa. You know what I mean? If you're gonna hypersexualize, you know, a gay pride or transgenderism and stuff like that, there's a time and a place for it. You know what I mean? Because if you're just gonna go ahead and do that in a public space and there's like 20 odd children, do you think that's appropriate or acceptable?
I couldn't even imagine willingly being around that many, really any kids, let alone 20.
Okay, well, you already find disgust in it, so why are you putting it out there in a place where there is a potential to have a lot of kids around, aka the park that I mentioned earlier, where they're doing this stuff at? You get my drift now? If you're already willing to say that you don't want to do this shit in front of kids, then why are you doing it in kids' spaces?
Not wanting to introduce kids to shit and just like, fuck, my head's buffering. God damn.
I know it's buffering, but
it's more so just to like, I hate children and I don't want to be around them if I don't have.
I know that, but here's the thing. You have to take them into account. You know what I mean? You wouldn't want your kids, right, to start fucking in the bathroom at school because that's what they go to school for. Do you want that to be the reason for them to do that?
It's gonna happen.
Right, but is that if we openly want to display all these forms of sexuality and stuff to them, do you not think that eventually they're gonna want to do that free willy-nilly when they want to? I mean, for God's sakes, we've seen the fucking hentais. Okay, we've seen the amount of eroticism that they want to throw towards school and doing stuff in school, right?
Well, I mean, a good chunk of that just comes from like the cartoons and shit. I don't know about you, man, but a lot of the shows I watched when I was a kid that my religious black grandma was absolutely okay with had a lot of weirdly horny shit in it. And I don't know if that was just like someone trying to like why were there so many episodes of just like suddenly being naked in public or pissing yourself?
Right. I get that. But you see how if we keep promoting it, like we already promote it online, right? With all these videos, movies, TV shows and stuff like that. Do you honestly think that if kids already are not have access to it, if they start seeing it in public spaces, they start to believe that it's okay to do so?
I don't know if they actually like would believe it's okay to do so.
Okay, let me ask you this simple question. If you have a bunch of kids, right, that are doing skateboarding, right, and half of them are your friends, okay, at one point or another, do you not feel like you're gonna want to try? Do you understand what peer pressure is?
Yeah.
Okay, do you understand if people do something, there is a tendency of wanting to repeat or do it as well? Well, if Tommy can do it, I want to do it too, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the premise we're getting at. And this is why this conversation keeps going in loopholes, because there's a lot of people that want to say, well, it's a part of who I am, or it's this, that, and the other. And it's like, that's understandable, but you're affecting people around you other than just yourself. There needs to be a modicum respect between me and you and my kids.
Safe and secure as a queer person because it wasn't sexual, and I could have these relationships with queer men, but there's no expectation to be sexual.
Yeah, and we see it at the bars. I mean, it's a go-go.
You go to a gay club, you're getting grabbed.
You are.
You're getting touched.
It's an
You're getting
expectation to be
groped.
sexual at the clubs. I mean, I avoid them at all costs at this point.
Community, I think they're doing a lot of what we're doing, especially now with more sexual liberation becoming a thing for them and their community. I also think that we have to remember, like, we've only been legal, as in like decriminalized in our sex for 20 years this year. That's crazy. every year up until 20 years ago.
Okay, let's actually talk about that. So you know how you said that, like you mentioned earlier, right? It's not new, but it's also new relatively, considering it's only been 20
For
years.
those who have spent, like, the actual old people who've had to bury this shit for Lord knows how long, this is a wild time for them.
I understand that it's a wild time, okay? But let's also look back at other things as well. What about polyamory? What about the sexes and the issues that come with the religion as well, right? Where you have certain religions where you shouldn't cheat with the wife and everything else, right? Those are fantasies as well. Those are sexual as well, aren't they?
Everything is sexual
Okay.
if you've been
Now-
on the internet long enough.
Right. Now, let's think about that for a second. What is streaking?
Running through a park
Wha-
naked.
Right. What is being a nudist?
Just living naked.
Okay, but also what? Fucking naked, right?
Yeah. You're,
All right. Now,
reliving your life.
Now let me say this. If it's okay for people to fuck in cars, if it's okay for people to do this, that, and the other, to cheat and do all these different things without legal repercussions, per se, for example, because this is what it is, right? We're talking about gay on the spectrum where it's like you can finally, have sex, you can finally get married and all this different liberation shit, right? What about the nudists? Why don't we see nude people on the streets? There is nude communities, but you see how it turned from in public
Nude as a general and as like a
yes. So
Yeah,
there are
which
norms
I
that
would-
we do have to abide to. So like, for example, you don't want to fuck in front of your kids. You don't want to fuck in front of other people's kids. Therefore, there is a general understanding that sexually speaking, there are certain things that we can and can't do in front of other people simply on the basis that A, you don't want to scar a child. B, you don't want to confuse someone about whether or not you don't want to feel shame. And there's a reason why there's shame that comes along with it. It's not the matter of fact of you doing the act with the person that you want to do. It's the matter of doing the act in general. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, it's the joy of the taboo. You know you're not supposed to.
Right. So if we take away the
Part of why
taboo,
really racist people are super into interracial, specifically focus on whatever it is the race that they hate the most.
I guess. I don't know. I like black women, but I know I like black women for a different reason.
Yeah, but
And-
you're also not a fucking racist.
Oh, well, that's a fucking given. I'm Asian. If I hated any specific race, I'd have to look back at myself. I'm like, huh? Anyways, reason why we feel bad about doing certain actions is because we know that the action in and of itself, not the action in which we're the people that we're doing it with, but the specific action itself. It's because we know that there is a modicum of wrong in doing it in front of kids or doing this, and what people are trying to do right now is normalize that. And I think that that is more damaging than it is good because of the fact of what? You're confusing children who are still learning things. You know what I mean?
But then that begs the question, alcohol is really bad. We don't want children getting into alcohol.
Yes.
But why is every other commercial alcohol, and if not alcohol, then medicine?
Well, the reason for that is because of legal restrictions, like age limit and actually being able to... We've actually sanctioned and did stuff legally that helps support even putting it in front of children in a way to where they can't do it. You know what I mean?
Then why don't we do that for sex?
Well, the reason for sex is because it's a modicum of love and expression of liberty. You know what I mean? It has a lot to do with liberty values, such as, for example, I can't suppress what your opinion is because that is your freedom of speech. You understand? That's not something that would inherently harm anyone. And in the same sense with sex, I mean, parents get caught having sex every now and then from their kids. That's not necessarily bad. The premise here that we're delegating it to is the fact that as parents, some parents don't want their kids learning of this stuff. And if they do, they need to learn at their own time in their own privacy so that their kid doesn't feel shame, right? In the same sense, they don't want to throw a child in a situation where they start questioning things that they're not yet ready to face. You understand what I mean? Because when there is a modicum of innocence still left within a child, their whole world can get turned upside down pretty fast. Like, you wouldn't want an 8-year-old sucking cock left and right, you know what I mean? Just because they saw it. In fact, if anything, we've actually witnessed quite a few situations of that similar sort, where it's one of the reasons why we made television the way we have with the different ratings. Because when they started showing pornographic images, you actually had kids that would quote unquote say, yes, when I was 8 years old, my fucking friend ended up touching me in places I didn't like. So you see how there's different levels of understanding. I mean, especially, let's look at it, for example, and this is not against anyone that's autistic or anything, but let's put it, for example, those people out there who have different learning curves, right? Some people will learn that one thing's acceptable and one thing's not, but they're all going to learn in different increments and different times, right? So with that being said, if there's going to be different learning curves for every different child, that means that we need to limit what they do learn so that they're not too far-fetched off from one another and hurt each other. Say, for example, Billy, who's used to domestic dispute and he's used to getting beat on, he starts beating other kids. We call that a bully, right? And we've condemned bullyism. We don't like bullies.
I'm sorry, that bullyism? That just fucking, that's a weird sounding word.
All right, fine. We've condemned bullies from committing certain acts. Like, we actually expel kids. We actually fucking reprimand them for their actions, right?
Barely.
Okay, now let's go back on the topic of sex, right? When people are having sex, what is that except mostly a pleasurable experience? Unless you have a really high tolerance for sexual acts, right? Then it becomes more of a hassle, especially for you women where you guys don't get to easily orgasm, right? So it might be a little bit more tedious for you guys. Now, for some other women, it might be really enjoyable, but not for everybody. Anyways, the point being is you don't want to relate something bad towards kids when it's actually something that is good. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, that's why the parents that like explaining it to the kid in a kid appropriate way.
Right.
They're gonna come across it at some point.
Right.
Anyway.
That's why doing this, especially when it comes to a situation where you see a toddler sees it and wants to recreate it, and then all of a sudden they're in the bathroom with one another and the kid just keeps grabbing daddy's dick or whatever else. That's inappropriate.
Well, yeah, but like
you don't want that growing
into
experience.
The talk of teaching sexual.
How do you do that to a toddler? You see the problem now?
Don't explain much to a toddler because their brain is just
oh my
until
God.
they suddenly.
All right, so if you have a child, right, a toddler, and
Disgusting, but go on.
For example, Auntie decided to show them Tootsie Roll, right? We know that Tootsie Roll in small amounts is fine. It's sweet, it's delicious, right? But the toddler says, ooh, this is fucking amazing. I don't want to eat anything else, and eats nothing but that. Now you have a problem. How can you say no to a child and not raise the child to want to rebel faster and sooner and only go down a spiraling path of bad behavior if it was presented to him from an outside person? Especially in our modern day and age where people are condemned from scolding their children. So you see how if people react to other people's needs and expectations, can you not expect those same people to expect other people to react and act accordingly?
Well, yes, but then there's any yes and every no is always going to lead into some extremes, which would just lead back into the conversation to begin with.
Anyways, since we went in a big loop and cycle, we're just going to keep trucking on.
That doesn't mean that all the things we see and all the things our friends see represent the majority of experiences. A huge portion of LGBTQ people exist in zero public LGBTQ spaces.
I think you draw the line of, you do this in the comfort of your home and you can show affection in public. I don't know if we need to be like indecent in public. I don't know if that would be considered.
How do you define indecent?
I'm in a
20-year relationship, a 20-year monogamous relationship with my husband.
Okay, we'll just go from here.
Even though we're not married. But we're not groping each other in public. We can peck, we joke around. When we walk into a room, they know we're together because we give. Yes, absolutely. We show extra affection at home in the privacy of our home or in the privacy of friends' homes because we feel comfortable in that.
And you know what that though is your specific preference for public affection. There are a million rom-coms out there with heterosexual people, and a funny thing seen in that movie is straight people having sex in some public space.
Correct.
I
still don't think that's appropriate.
I don't necessarily do either.
I
don't necessarily do either. I'm just saying we're talking about personal preferences.
I know, but I think a lot of times in this, and I don't disagree with what you guys said, but a lot of times what I'll hear is like, well, the straight people do this, and I always grew up saying, I clean my house before I tell somebody else to clean theirs. I'm not straight. Right. Therefore, if straight people are doing something wrong and gay people are doing something wrong, I'm going to address the gay people that are doing something wrong and not
addressing like the people who have been setting the stage for all of us to like follow suit with. You know, like we live in a heteronormative culture, like everything that we see is based off of the way that they exist.
The whole idea of over-sexualization and things like that, I think the danger in it is that for so long it's been weaponized against us, so we're always kind of like under this magnifying glass of like, oh, well, can I hold hands, can I kiss this person? And then, you know, I don't think we necessarily have to like mimic quote-unquote bad behavior simply because that was what was served to us.
That's
Pride
another.
is still necessary.
See, that's what I mean though. Like when you're thinking about it, right? While we want to say that something is fine in the private home or in open spaces, at the end of the day, a lot of them jump it up and push it out there to be just a cultural norm, right? Or they put it up in the sense of a personal preference, but they don't typically just ask the question, well, what about someone else's opinion? You know what I mean? It's like at the end of the day, while we're in public spaces, we should think about other people's needs. You understand what I'm getting at now? And that at the end of the day, people should be able to do what they want. There's no question to ask there. The only problem is in a public space or in a private space, because of the fact that we should start thinking of other people's needs and desires. Because I don't think at work I should be groping my fucking colleague, and how far can anyone grope anybody before it becomes inappropriate? You know what I'm saying? I mean, women have advocated this for the longest time by saying that it's aggressive mannerisms of guys, you know, hitting on them or touching them in places they didn't want to be touched, and that it's not appropriate in open spaces. So if women are entitled to say that, why isn't it guys are able to be entitled to say that? And why is it that other people aren't entitled to say that when it comes from a couple kissing and making out and shit, or even going as far-fetched as fucking, you know?
But people do object when, like, guys and they thems and non-binaries do object to that stuff, like women.
Okay, well then
I might have just like lost the point. I apologize.
Oh, you're fine. It was just about matter of like sexualizing stuff and in front of others. It's like, if we're willing to accept one person saying, no, I don't want to see that, I think we should put that on the premises of like, maybe there's other people out there and we should be respectable about it, basically, is what I'm drawing the point at. Is that's why sexualization of certain things should be limited to certain places and times and not in public spaces. Because I don't think it would be a lot like normalized or allowed for somebody to just randomly start fucking in an open park. I mean, literally, we have indecent exposure laws that prevents people from even flashing other grown adults, let alone should we not consider that when it comes to the prides. You know what I mean? If it's expected of straight people, I think it should be expected also of any other person, not just straight people or not just men.
You have like clubs that'll set up, or groups that'll set up little places to go and do like public shit with horny intention.
Yeah, but usually that's out of place and out of mind. You know what I mean by that? Like, for example, Burning Man, they go in the middle of the desert where there is no traffic to do what they want to do. Or Coachella as well. Or, for example, you have, let's say, the adult industry. They usually atypically stay within places that they've rented out and nobody's going to be coming around. You know what I mean?
So then it's just like block off Pride?
No, it's not block off Pride. It's just
like just to keep it to streets, that way people, those who want to see the thing, do the thing, can go and do it.
Right.
It's kept away from general public.
Right. Just like, say, for example, what do you call those fucking things?
What things?
The mosh pits, where people end up beating each other up and shit.
The violence pits, yes.
Right. Those usually are within a confines of a closed doors where fucking walls are thicker than shit. People walk away bruised and hurt, but no cops were called. You know what I mean?
But they're happy because they're bruised and hurt.
Right. But they did it in a place where it's still acceptable to do it. No one's saying that you can't do it. It's shit. If anything, I say live your best life. You know what I mean? Be happy, be gay, be straight, be whatever the fuck you want to be. You can identify for a chair and you want to have someone sit on your face for all I give a fuck. The point I'm saying is there should be localized spaces for every event, right? Just like, say, for example, you know, airsoft fields, right? Or paintball fields.
Yeah, shooting for fun.
They're shooting for fun, but would you accept a random mob group of people that suddenly holds or paintball gear and start shooting it in the middle of the street, potentially hurting someone? Or getting their property painted over.
In the shooting place, and then go.
Exactly. It's not that we're trying to divide or hide the gay pride. What we're trying to do is make a safe space. I mean, shit, that's the whole reason why we made men and women's bathrooms, for God's sakes. That way you could do your business in private and no one hassles you over it. You know what I mean?
And then there are the ones that are public. The communal piss.
Right, but those are nasty, and more times than not, nobody wants to be a part of that.
No, I don't mean those. There was a meme I came across. It was like competitive pissing or something.
Oh
If
dear
I could
God!
find the picture,
I'm pretty
it
sure
was,
that's
like,
still. I'm pretty sure that's still privatized.
It was the picture was like a bathroom, but with like 50 fucking urinals, like in like reaching all the way up to the ceiling. I'm using my hands to like help me talk. You can't see my hands, so that doesn't really help.
You disabled bean.
Like. It was just like, of course it's gonna be way easier to piss it to the one that's like 2 inches off the ground as opposed to the one 2 inches from the ceiling.
Right.
It's like, oh yes, competitive piss, the communal competitive piss.
But you get the point though, right? It's not like nobody has shame. I don't think there is any modicum of shame anymore compared to 20 years ago when you used to call someone the F word and they would get offended because obviously it was meant with harm, right? Now, if anything, more people are saying, oh, that's gay, but they're saying it in a fun way. They're not saying it like in a bad way, in a bad connotation, if that makes sense. Maybe in other fucking continents, maybe, but not fucking United States. You know what I'm saying?
I think.
Anyways, we'll continue the prop because we keep getting away from the video.
Yeah, I think Pride's necessary, but we need a PR revamp. Yeah, I think we need a rebrand. I take a lot of issues with what I see at Pride parades now, just because, as we've discussed previously, I think that it's a little bit over-sexualized. We're celebrating essentially sex rather than love, and we have people running around riding bikes with their balls out in front of kids. And for me,
Where are you seeing this?
Right.
Yeah, I'm curious about going
New
to.
York City and Seattle, both of those had naked people walking the streets.
terrible.
Walking
San
on bikes.
Francisco, one of them was on a bike. I saw the video of him on a bike. I didn't want to.
I would never have my balls out on a bike. That sounds dangerous.
Well, no, me either.
That's
Right.
dangerous.
Me either, but
it is
it's the
does
fact that it
exist.
is allowed because we have this shield of it's pride, don't mess with gay people because of our history, which is granted. But people are afraid to look at our culture and say that's not acceptable because if straight people were walking around doing that, it would be a totally different discussion.
I don't think that's the majority of the issue, though. I mean, the reality is that being visible,
I'm still
period,
stuck on riding a bike with your balls out.
Actually, that's not uncommon for straight women to do either. And I'm not saying with testicles. God, if they had testicles, I would look away. But what I'm saying is that you've had people, we've actually known this for a while. It's become a meme, a very popular meme, in fact, NSFW meme, where you see that girl that's riding with a skirt, and then there's like a giant dildo instead of the fucking chair. So that's still not an acceptable act, as funny as it is.
I'm not saying that it's good. I'm just saying that, like, as a person with a punani, with a poussoir.
A poussoir, yes.
A poussoir. It don't think like getting hit doesn't feel. From what I assume, from what I've heard from those with a pinot
From
and
the
10
grapevine.
degrees.
Mm-hmm.
From the grapevine.
Oh my god, the evil laugh. Okay.
From the grapevine, y'all balls hurt a lot and can get twisted. That doesn't sound like it would work very well with bicycles, unless there's like friendly bike seats, which there might be. I don't know. I don't have balls. That's not something I've ever needed to look up. But that just doesn't sound like a fun time. It sounds extremely painful. What if you have long balls? What if they get caught in the wheels or like you like kick your own balls?
Mm-hmm.
That sounds terrible.
It is terrible.
Like-
It's like punching yourself in the tit, but squarely on the nipple.
Like,
The point being is that, like, there are people that are gonna be brazened and bold with these type of thing. Where are you going? Are you trying to become part of the crowd? Or you want to be with them?
I was looking.
You're spazzing everywhere. You fucking gremlin. No, the whole premise though, it's like you sit there and there's gonna be people who are gonna feel empowered because they have this big old shield, like he said, right? And I think we need to go back on our morals and our values and remind ourselves that some things are best kept behind closed doors between you and your partner.
My secret 11 herbs and spices.
Yes, so however you do your fried chicken. But the point being is,
Yeah.
the point being is that there's certain things that have merit to them, you know? Like, we've had look at society back in the day in the early Roman times where they would fuck each other in front openly, you know? Everything was sexualized and open. But at the same time, back in the day, kids were fucking kids. Like, actually fucking each other. Because there wasn't an age limit on these things.
All I wanted to do was draw. I liked the crayon colors. Fuck crazy art and fuck rose art, though. Those two were shit.
What are you on about?
Crayons and being a kid.
We weren't even. I swear to God, I am going to yeet you into next Tuesday. Get back in the frame, you fucking nutter.
I mean, the reality is that being visible, period, is vital.
Absolutely. We can be
none of
visible
us
without
will.
being sexual.
None of us will be alive to see the day when heterosexual people and homosexuals have equal agency in what's allowed and what's not allowed in the public space.
I'm going
Me
to
personally,
smack
I
you.
actually think Pride is very necessary. I love it. I wouldn't say Pride parades. I feel like you guys are leaning towards like the parades itself. Pride.
I am going to smack you. Settle down. Oh my God.
I was trying to put the rat on my head.
Are you serious right now? In the middle of recording? God, we're taking drugs away from you next time. Breathe, bitch. Make yourself bigger. Holy crap. I can't fix this shit in postscript, you asshole.
Is that good?
Ah, child of the abyss. I will fix you as best I can.
Wait,
There we go.
Do you need me
No,
bigger?
stop. I am fixing as you're trying to fix. I will slap you. Jesus Christ. We got a video to get through.
It is like liberation, you know.
Just proud of who you are and loving
Yes,
yourself,
and just,
accepting yourself.
yeah, accepting yourself and having the people around you in your circle really accept you. It really tells the future generation, like, not only is it okay, but look how far we've come. Yeah. At 2011, you know, the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy was abolished. I'm in the military, and had that not been abolished, I would not be able to be, you know, a minority, be openly gay, and still be able to serve my country.
Yeah, and I want to just say thank you for your service
Oh,
before I
thank you.
move on. And that's a prime example of the pride that I would love to attend, is someone who highlights service members, gay CEOs, people who are successful, who are contributing to society. Celebrate who you are, love who you are, but the pride is no longer about being overly promiscuous because we're not allowed to. We don't need to overcorrect to the point.
Are you having a propagation of rats going on your fucking forehead right now? Really? Are you making a whole family pop up? Could you cut it out? I will smack you.
That we start to get backlash, we need to correct our PR.
But I still think we're looking at a small group of the people that have pride.
But the
'cause you
small
said,
groups,
you
but
said-
they speak the loudest.
No, but they don't always. You said you saw 2 people naked. Like from
No,
those
2 separate instances of groups of people who were naked
Out of
with their
hundreds of
butts out.
thousands.
Exactly.
Right,
Around the
exactly.
world. And
But
like
that
you were
gets
saying,
highlighted.
looking at specific things with a level of shame and then have to look at like where are we shameful within ourselves and why is that something that we should.
Well, here's the thing that they fucking cut out. He said that it gets highlighted. You know what I'm saying? Even if it's not the whole community doing it, it's again the same premise of monkey see, monkey do. If I start thinking that someone else is accepting of certain act or doing something, and oh my God, now it's in social media, right? Let's look at that, social media. How many times do you see a trend popping up and somebody is doing it because they feel emboldened by someone else that's doing it? Let's look at shit like the bucket challenge. Let's look at Jackass the movie and the amount of people that came out with all these daring stunts and acts and how many people felt emboldened.
Why Jackass got popular? The whole thing seems stupid.
Because it promoted violence in a way. Yes, it was stupid fun and there were stuntmen, but it propagated into other people. Anyways, besides that point,
Dumb as hell.
what I'm saying is people felt emboldened when someone else does something, right? So let's look, for example, and this is no offense to the black community, but it does get highlighted in social media. Let's look at the fact that they pulled away that Walmart in that one state because of the fact of how many fucking people went onto TikTok and started eating at the Walmart and then walking away not paying. How many times that they got stolen from in that particular state and everything else just because someone else did it and it was on camera, caught on camera. Look at all the liberal states and all the problems that they're facing with because the prosecution is not being committed properly they would rather fire the security guy who reveals the damn license plate versus the guys who actually stole. Did they get prosecuted afterwards? Yes, because they were able to see the license plate. But instead of rewarding the guy who managed to find a way to be non-violent, to expose a bad act, he still lost his job. Does that make sense? You see how stupid that is? And if we become more promiscuous in this way, more sexualized, more okay, and you're throwing it towards children, do you not believe that at one point or another you're going to have more teen pregnancies more than ever before? Considering the fact that we've also abolished what's it called? Abortions.
We should have abortion.
Oh my god. I swear to god, you're pea brain. Sometimes, I love you, bitch, but I think that's the only thing you heard out of everything I just said.
Pea brain.
I feel like you're so lost into what you're doing with your rats and whatever it is with the candy that you're not all here right now.
I'm not even holding the candy. It is down. It is not touched.
Exactly. How I want to say this. When it comes to any community, they're really quick to jump to a fact. You get what I mean by that? Like, if it helps defend my position, I'm gonna jump on it just so I could prove myself right. So like, he jumped on that guy for their boyfriend being 6 foot something, instead of just listening to him. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's very dismissive. And for these big communities who are all about don't dismiss the little guy, you just dismiss the one voice in the room. Does that make sense? And I find that appalling, to be honest.
Why not get hate? My husband gets more business.
I'm so happy for you that this is true for you. I really am.
Yeah, totally.
But the reality is that you represent a small minority of LGBTQ people and how they actually experience life in America.
To your sense of freedom, which is so admirable, I think that those things are built on blocks of people who probably did feel that pride was necessary. So it's a beautiful thing that we can have the freedom to,
change our mind.
Admire that.
Yeah. And I think we all want everyone to feel the way that you feel, like you don't need it, but that's just not the case.
My name is Sean, and I am a Patreon member who is asked to read you this next prompt. The LGB should be separated from the TQIA+.
That's a good question. Do you think that they should be separated?
No, they'll be together, supporting each other.
But why?
Because everyone should be supported.
Okay.
Should have the freedom to care and help.
Well, yes, of course that's a thing, but do they necessarily have to be together to be supported?
Well, no. Anyone could help.
Because I have to ask, okay, you say everyone needs to be supported, right? And that is a good intentional heart. I appreciate the little golden heart that you have there. But let's be honest when I say this, okay? If that was the case, why isn't there an S in there for straight people? Where's the love and support for straight people?
It's not assumed that the straight people will be helpful, will be supporting.
But you're still expelling them from the group. Does that make sense?
Well, no. It's still an alphabet with still more room for all letters.
Yeah. So I do want to start with that. But I do think that the LGB is very specific, rooted in science. It's very clear as day. We have lesbian, gay, and bi. Main difference between male and female, we all know what that is.
The reason why I stepped forward with hesitation was because I think that there are such lived differences in experiences that we experience. Although collectively, I think that we all know the collective experience of being a sexual deviant. There just is a difference in lived experience that I think is important to talk about and acknowledge, and that's my grounds for agreeing with perhaps a separation.
Mine is very different. To be clear, the science is very solid on identities other than gender assigned at birth being valid. Science is very clear, robust, there is no question that it's legit. We, as cisgender people, do a really bad job of standing up for people who aren't cisgender. I call out the fact that cisgender queer people are treated differently than non-cisgender queer people, and until we do better, we don't deserve to have the letters be.
I'm gonna be honest. I feel like this guy's put into the group just to be divisive on purpose. Is it just me? Like, I don't think he has agreed with anything. Like, he wants to say that he's agreeing, but at the same time, when it
meant a lot to deflect on things.
Right.
Be together.
Much better grounds.
So, I mean, I agree with what you're saying, but I think in general,
presenting an argumentative piece, he softens it with a compliment a lot.
Which I don't think is bad, because I understand where he's coming from, because I know I do that quite a bit myself. But at the same time, I am trying to support the actual thing itself. Either that or I completely repel it. You know what I mean? I don't actually sit on the kind line of, yeah, I'm going to shoot you, but I love you, bitch, and then shoot you. I'm not going to do that. I'm either going to say, no, I do understand your point of view, but can you see it from someone else's point of view type of shit. So I don't know. I feel he makes me feel a little iffy.
Conversation can become very hostile because it seems like...
I'm sorry, what was that?
There's so many points of view for so many different things.
And I feel like if we're going to push one point of view, we need to push all of them, if that makes sense. We can't just silence one point of view over another.
Be a part, like, I don't want you to be my friend. I don't want to be with you, be next to
just
you, be seen
rats.
with you, and that's not the case. One is an identity, and one is a sexuality.
I haven't added
and that's
any
just
more
the simple difference between the two. Eventually, as both groups are fighting for their own personal interests, those are going to not work cohesively. So one is going to be quieter, and one is going to get taken advantage of, etc. And it's not that we can't support the TQ+. Right. I just think that they're two vastly different things.
I think that you oversimplify identity versus sexuality, though, because there are tons of men who identify as straight who have, on occasion, with regularity, once in their life, sex with men, which is why...
They're bi. I think once with men, sure, experimenting, but I think if there is a guy that's identifying as straight that sometimes dabbles with men...
He might identify as straight, but he's not.
You're bi.
So two things. First of all, there are lots of gay men that we are allowed that...
So no, they raise a good point. Like I see this in VR more times than not, right? Where somebody's gonna identify as being straight or bi or gay or whatever.
Right, but I'm gonna smash a femboy or something.
Right, or they say something like, I identify as a woman, and yet the only people that they sleep with is of the same gender, like biologically speaking. And there comes a point where if we're gonna really disseminate what it means to be a certain gender, that means we also have to rework these definitions like LG and B and so on. You know what I mean? We really have to.
Get rid of the labels and just the whole vibe.
I wish we could, but people are really adamant about this stuff.
Like, just all get pizza and play Mario Kart. To have a nap.
Maybe even Smash Brothers, just for funsies.
Yeah! Yeah!
We can call gay all day and all night that occasionally have sex with women, and we don't question whether or not they're gay.
They're bi.
But are you entitled to titling someone else's? Is that up to you?
The title is an objective fact. If you sleep with men and women, then you are bi.
What if someone that you were talking about doesn't agree?
Yeah.
Well, that's a good premise now, isn't it? Because let's put it in these terms, right? You program a toaster, and the toaster now has AI in it, right? Well, the AI is going to say, I identify as a fucking microwave or something, right? Does that make it a microwave?
Does it change itself to become a microwave?
No. It's a fucking toaster, right? It still has the function of toasting bread.
I mean, yeah, but at the same time, who cares what it calls itself? It just
if you don't agree.
Well, that's what I mean, though.
Whatever it is you're wanting, that wants to do the thing you want it to do.
Well, that's the premise that I'm getting at, is that I don't see the point in doing all this labeling and shit for meticulous stuff that only really involves you, you know?
If you want me to call you Bob or Jessica, just tell me and I'll fucking do it. Doesn't cost me nothing.
Right. That's why I don't get the hate when it comes to, you know, being able to do whatever. But I will say that just like, again, before when I brought up the toaster analogy, you're going to call it a toaster because that's what its basic function is until it tells you otherwise, right? You're going to assume. We can't help but assume. Like, for example, if you go into a dentist office, you're not going to expect your dentist to know how to fix your fucking car.
I'm just going to assume that everyone is named Daniel from now on.
You're dumb. But you get the point.
Until told otherwise.
You get the point. You're not going to get your car fixed at a dentist. You're going to go to a fucking mechanic to get it done. And you're going to do that off of the...
People have multiple interests.
Hun, I swear to God, I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to murder one of your rats.
I mean, that's fine, but the fact is you sleep with men and women, so you're bi.
Flat out.
Can we not talk about who we're having sex with? Just for this problem.
Because a lot of what's in the media today is sensationalized content about, you know, targeting children. A lot of it is valid, and some of it is not. But a lot of times it's gay men that are doing it, and trans people are getting blamed for it, when it's really gay men in drag. And because the letters are together, people don't know the difference. And even when I first started like coming out, the first thing that somebody said to me was, "Are you going to transition into a woman?" And I'm like, "Wait, what? That has nothing to do with my sexuality."
Does liking dick have to do with you having a dick?
That's the premise, though. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, people will always deny this. But what you present and what you show to other people is what other people are going to assume out of either respect, disrespect, doesn't matter. It's all about first appearances. We've always talked about first appearances mattering. You know what I mean? They matter for a reason. Like, you're not gonna hire the guy who slouches over, who looks like he just came out of a dumpster and didn't get ready for an interview because you believe or he identifies with being the best at his job. You know what I mean?
I identify with having a $5 raise.
Okay, well, that's the point. You have to present and show some things, and other things you have to prove it, right? Just for example, if you're gay, if you proudly say you're gay, but you haven't sucked a dick in your life or haven't taken it up the ass or whatever, or even fucked a dude, how can you honestly say you're gay until you've done it? Now, I'm not trying to say that you can't be sexually attracted to guys. That's besides the point. What I'm premising at is that people are going to have some form of disbelief because of the fact that you have to show your intent. Does that make sense? Like, let's say, for example, you're not going to have some big burly dude in a ski mask come into your home simply because they say, "I'm not going to hurt you." You're going to have disbelief. You're wearing a goddamn mask, right?
There's nothing wrong with doing that, but because they're together from an outsider's point of view, optically, I think if our goal is to educate the populace on who we are, then we need to make a more clear distinction between LGB and TQ+.
I don't disagree. I think it's just important that if we do that, we don't erase any of the validity of the people who are in the group that we're not a part of. And also, what I wonder about in this context is some people are born intersex, so they have sexual organs of both genders. How do we identify under the criteria you guys have identified? How would we label them? Because if they have both and they have sex with only one gender, what are they?
It's such a rare case. I'm not
But
saying
it does
they don't
exist.
I don't think the exception makes the rule.
Yeah, that's something that they said, and I like how the black guy in the back was like, "We call them intersex." That's literally the identification. That's the classification. Like, it's not that hard to understand, you know?
People born with 11
I think
fingers.
as human beings, we like to package things that we can develop a palette for. We like to make things more palatable. We like to establish clear-cut rubrics for what is and what isn't a person. I think that's just the natural human tendency.
That's how our brain categorizes.
But I think that, you know, what separates us from the apes is that we can give credence to these differences and create pockets of space, at least for a discussion, if you don't necessarily agree or whatever.
I love this guy. This guy is awesome. Yeah, because we like to do that. We like to exaggerate shit. You know what I mean? We like patterns. We like patterns. We like organizing. And that's a part about the human experience. We take things, we learn from it, and then we adopt and assume the next course of action because we need to. Like, for example, let's look at you ever seen the plank experiment? Where people get put in VR and there's like this plank and you're on a skyscraper, right? Your brain immediately thinks, "Oh my God, I don't want to fall," right? That's just a rational mind at work. And the same thing here with their conversation is that we're going to rationalize things mainly because it simplifies our life. Because at the end of the day, we don't want a complicated life. We want to simplify it. We want to make it easy. We want to make it navigable.
Some things just can't be made to fit in a nice little pretty box.
Right. Well, that's because other people don't want the box for some fucking reason. But
some people want pretty balls.
Are you talking about the guy on the bicycle? It's not that anyone's inherently trying to be mean about it, and I'm sure that some people experience mean people, but I will say that there's a reason why we classify things hot, cold, wet, dry, and all this different shit, because at the end of the day, we know that we have to face that particular thing in a certain way. You know what I mean?
Plasma is the fourth form of matter. Shit, I don't know why that scared me.
I think it would be an incredible disservice
You are
to the
special
transgender community
today.
who gave us a lot of the beginning for us to fight for our rights,
We're-
separation from that. That's just so privileged of us, like Marsha P. Johnson threw that first brick at Stonewall, and because of her...
She didn't throw the first brick.
Or the second or the
She got there
third.
at 2 a.m., first of all, and second of all, Marsha P. Johnson was also a gay man, so when she was fighting for those rights, she was fighting for gay rights because she was gay.
Was she a
I
gay
totally
man because
agree.
of the time that it was?
She didn't transition until long after Stonewall actually happened. But that's neither here nor there. We're here to defend. I'm here to defend the TQ being part of the LGB. Yes, there are some gay men that will overlook what's underneath the belt. That happens. But to say that you have to like them, that's wrong. And I also have a heart for the Q, because we can't clearly define the Q. When I was young, it was questioning. Now it's queer. Queer was a slur once upon a time. But I look at those people who were former homosexuals who now live a heterosexual lifestyle. They're never going to be accepted by the straight community, and they're not going to be accepted by our community. So I've put them under the Q umbrella. Those straight people who do have sex with the same gender on occasion, they would fall under that Q. They may not fall under the B. So I have a heart for them because they do exist in our spheres. We just can't put them on a pedestal above any of us because we're all in this together.
I also don't think that they should be divorced because I'm a huge disability advocate. I have a mental health condition. It's very different from someone who uses a wheelchair. We still have a disability.
What you're getting at is that we're a minority. They're a minority. And the more that you take apart those minorities, the harder it is for us to fight for our rights.
The queer community is already divided.
I will say this to chip in on what they said. I don't think it's so much so about making the minority an even smaller minority. I think it's the fact that they feel that if they do so, it's going to take power away from people. And hear me out. I know that sounds really fucked up, but hear me through. We've witnessed a certain trend that if you have some kind of minority backing you, you have the utmost strength in a conversation, right? And with that being said, as much as we don't put people on a pedestal, we have. We do that with women, we do that with men, we do that with, depending on the circumstance and situation, whether you're this, that, and the other in the number, you have been pedestalized in a fashion or another, right? Like for men, for example, they've been pedestalized as a working class. Women have been pedestalized as being mothers and other stuff like that, right? And there is no way where we're going to find true equilibrium because there's always going to be people who are going to want to feel above other people. So I don't know. I don't think making a new minority is going to change the status quo. If anything, it's going to dispel people from trying to... I know we should all be together. I always push for that. I always push for the utmost equality. I feel like it's more along the lines that they want to keep their supremic ways. I think that's the major fear about most people, is that if we really start to classify everything appropriately and accurately, the forces that be would shift again. You know what I mean? The power in a conversation would shift again. The respects would shift again. People would treat it lesser than it really is. And they're afraid that if that's the case, those who do like speaking up about these things, who do like to take power, won't feel like they have that power anymore, and it just blows up in their face. They can't do their bad behavior patterns and stuff like that anymore.
Since the queer community is already divided,
if everyone is super, then is anyone super?
Right. That's why you need to always have an oppressor for that, and you always need to have someone who is a bottom of the barrel, someone who takes all the blame and punishment. And they typically, that's what, like straight people, white people, or whatever that's against the minorities right now. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of different kinds. I'm just not off the top of my head.
The two is going to make them even more divided. And a lot more animosity between queer and T with LGBT.
It's a double-edged sword because in one way it's like, okay, well, we don't want to divide too much because we don't want to lose our united front against heteronormativity or whatever. But then at the same time, if we can't teach the nuances of our various identities to a heteronormative society, then it's like, okay, well, aren't you gay, aren't you trans? Like it's all the same thing to them. So I think it's a balance between being all awash and then also noting that we are uniquely made up of all these different experiences.
But I think if we had a stronger community, like that wouldn't be the case. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Like if you don't like me because who I am, I know that my brother right here or my sister right there is gonna like me and they're gonna support me, and that's all I need because it's all about my personal experience and what's in my circle. You don't need to be in my circle, but because it's within my own circle that I'm getting all this, belittlement and hatred. Everyone just wants to be accepted. Honestly, like that's the way it's looked at.
And can't we all, to some extent, identify underneath the Q? Your attraction maybe has shifted in some way to different types of men. Like things are constantly evolving and in my opinion fluid. So to kind of force ourselves even into the LGB is to sit within the binary that doesn't help any of us anyways.
But I think all the Q stuff is just a matter of your personality.
Right.
Like
Here's the thing that puzzles me. If we understand what Q means, right, which is queer, which is, I guess, in association with flamboyancy or doing the same gender or whatever else, why is there a need for the LG to begin with, right? Like, why are we sitting here debating what the hell is G? If you guys don't even know what G is, why is it a part of it? If it's already within the spectrum of LGB as it is.
I'm confused because G is gay.
No,
L
Q.
is-
We're talking about Q.
Oh.
Which is queer. Which usually queer means flamboyancy, which means, you know, doing the same gender, doing things that are considered gay or lesbian or whatever.
You know you're not, like, 125%, you're not straight. You're flavored, you just don't know what flavor. But you know you got more in you than just water.
Is it that they're trying to make it to where, like, Q is representative of being queer but being straight at the same time? Like, what's the definition of it? But here's the point. If it's not common enough for people to understand or know, or maybe I'm just ignorant, and the panelists also don't seem to fully grasp it, why is it a classification? You know what I'm saying?
I think it's kind of when they were talking about Marsha P, that enough of the older queer or older gays, whichever grouping you wish to use, with now like there being more terms and labels that more people are feeling more comfortable with. They just, if they, you know, if Bob, Frank, Jess, and Joe all feel, yeah, queer's the bubble I fit within. It's a comfy bubble. I'm using my hands again, which you can't see, so I really need to stop doing that. Fucking shit.
You crack me up, I swear.
See my hand.
Dude, we barely see you half the time. You keep glitching the fuck out. I just think that it's a little on the silly nose side of things, like on the nose type of thing, where people are far too worried and not worried enough about labels, where it's like, okay, find your fucking in between before we yeet you out of the stratosphere.
Oh yeah,
That's
but
so-
like at the same time, you don't want to not care enough, but fuck, it's really tiring if you care too much.
Well, that's why they always say you gotta find a balance.
So many different labels, and you like this kind of person, then you're this sexuality, when reality just goes back to
But it's not
you're
a
gay,
function
straight, or
of
bi,
hetero- but
and
that's
then
a-
your personality.
But our
And it's
community is
just-
not doing itself any services by categorizing ourselves. Bear, twink.
Yeah.
And then you see it on the
More
apps, on the
animal
profiles.
names.
Oh, no fats, no fat.
What?
There should be more animal names like, oh, you're a bear, oh, you're a twink, oh, you're a cobra, you're a
I'm a fucking koala.
You're a koala. Oh my God, Becky, you can't just call someone a koala.
I'm a fucking koala.
Every single thing in like the entire what all of us collectively feel the thing is, no one's gonna fucking listen because it's too damn long. It's gotta be short, sweet, to the point.
That's where, like I said before, like there's beauty in simplicity and there's beauty in the complicated, but we're trying to complicate things rather than just make things simplistic. And then we get offended when it's too simplistic. You know what I mean? Like, let's look at example. We used to have a way of being courteous towards one another. You'd call someone sir, you'd call someone ma'am, right? That was very simple. It was better than me addressing it to, like, hey, you, that type of stuff. It was a cordial thing. But because it was too simple, people started to feel offended by it because either it defined someone's age or someone went as far as saying you're misgendering me and all these different stuff. And it's like, dude, someone was genuinely just trying to be nice and get to the point, and you took offense by it. Like, at what point are we gonna sit here and not acknowledge the fact that maybe even us just saying, what's up, my guy, or what's up, and that's somehow offensive because you can't look up or something?
Pigs can't look up.
Oh my God.
Sky.
You get my point. I swear to God. I need to have a bonk stick to hit you with, I swear. I'm gonna go look for one.
The TQ plus, and I'm not saying I agree with it. We don't need to go into the legislation. All I'm saying is that the narrative that gay men are being attacked when other letters are, not giving any merit to the attacks, it is confusing and it's harmful to young gay men and their success because they're force-fed this narrative that they can't.
That's totally fair, but there's been over 560 legislation bills put into some sort of vote, right? And over 220 of those have been for transgender. That leaves, what, around 300 plus, not just at the TQ?
I think that there's a lot of nuance when it comes to the laws that we have to talk about, but either way, when you say over 500 LGBTQ plus, the distinction between the two gets lost, and I don't think that it's
I passed one of those laws. I passed one of those laws in Nebraska that protects children under the age of 18 from receiving gender-affirming care
is
or
that
hormones.
guy?
Because I've seen.
And you're proud of that.
Yes, I am very proud of that.
so
Which
ashamed of
one?
you.
Because I have
that
friends
one
who
in
had
this
their
movie.
first
The
experience
amount
with
of
affirming care.
internalized homophobia
Can I
Which
finish?
one? The one in the
Can I
skirt?
finish?
We're sitting
Or-
there
Can I
because of the
finish?
stuff you felt as a child.
I'm sure a lot of
is-
Wait, which one? The guy in the
The one in the
braids?
heels with the weird mohawk braid thingy.
Oh, I'm not quite sure, but they did have his name up earlier, and I'm sure he has like a YouTube channel or
Is
some shit,
Is
because
this
I know
guy
most of them
a
do.
politician or something?
Why? Why do you ask?
All of these things he's done. The organizing the pride, passing a law, or the legislation.
They just talk about stuff that matters to them. I mean, I don't think that's indicative to much.
Well, no, it's because he said I passed, not like I helped pass or I voted for, but outright specifically saying I passed. That or I'm just reading into words too much.
Maybe. I don't know. We'd have to double back on it.
So
disagree with him,
sad.
but let him finish because we both have things
We can
to say.
all talk, but like let's let. each
Because
other
when I
finish.
passed this legislation that you say targets LGBT people, I sat next to a
Oh yeah, he did say I passed. I think he means mostly that he voted for it.
He needs to choose his words better.
I guess. Because he is one of the conservative ones, and I think the ones that he's arguing with are the liberal ones. I'm not sure.
a young girl who her first experience with this type of care was a double mastectomy at 15. She's now 19, doesn't
And
know
how
if she'll be
common
able
is
to.
that?
It's
It's
actually
not.
very common because.
How
Fewer than
common?
3%
I want a
of
number.
people.
How
Can I
common?
finish?
How common?
Can I
This
finish?
is, you
though?
passed
You're
the law.
asking me a question in the middle
you
of my
passed
statement.
a law. You
You're
passed a law that affects so many kids from feeling like
Yes, I
themselves.
did.
Transgender
I'm proud
kids.
of my law.
That's
God.
unfortunate, and I'm ashamed
If
of
that's
you
what it's
because
going to take to get you to stop, so I.
So this is making me want to kill myself because people want to say that it's straight people doing this, but as you could tell, they're arguing with themselves. I'm ashamed of you. I use these words. These are the words that they decide to choose. You know what I mean? Because as somebody who is not a minority myself, at least I don't think I am. I don't know. But as someone who is not a minority or doesn't believe in being a minority, I have to walk around treading like I'm fucking walking into a minefield every time I open my mouth around anyone. But you don't get that from they don't get that. Minorities don't get that. You know what I mean? Because your heritage or your group of people have suffered something great. You guys, like they said at the beginning of this, there's a giant shield protecting them. And it's like, dude, at the end of the day, it's your own people telling you this shit because the people who aren't the minority don't have that as an option because they get canceled quicker than shit.
can finish my thought, I appreciate that.
all right, you know
So-
what? I'm going to shut up until you finish, but I would really like to say something when you're done.
Sure. The person that I testified with, who their experience was a
The
double
one
mastectomy.
person.
Let him
The
finish,
one
let him finish,
person.
let him finish,
Are you
let him
going
finish.
to step
person.
in? Like,
Let
can
him
we
finish, let him finish.
People talk.
Okay, that one person was one person in Nebraska, but I know a plethora of
what
other
state do you live
people.
in?
Hold on, let him finish. Let
I
him
know a
finish.
plethora of other people in other states
The
all over this
generalizations
country
are so easy. I
who
know a
are
plethora of
feeling-
people all over the
who-
country.
Let's pause.
Can
and
we
then
not do this?
we'll
Like,
get
what is the
it.
what is
Okay.
what is the? Can we let them talk?
Let's just
You're gonna
pause.
get time to talk.
I don't
It's
appreciate
okay.
that.
I know, I'm furious too, but let's
here's
let
the
him
deal.
finish.
He's pissed off more than you, and he's quiet. Just let him. You're gonna get your point out. Just let him.
I'm
talk.
good. Thank you.
Just let him talk.
Okay, let's pause.
You say how many people? You say it's a small subset. But for the people who it affects them for the rest of their lives. A decision they made as a child will affect them for the rest of their lives. This person will never feel their sensation on their chest. They don't know if they're going to ever be able to have a child, and they know they will never be able to breastfeed. They will never be a woman in the regular senses. And this is happening more and more because we're conditioning our young people to say, hey, this is okay, this is okay. You can make these decisions. As a senior in this community, I have to say, wait a second, you guys are kids. Wait till you have your whole lives. Let's talk about this.
Honestly, shame on you for not going after the actual facts. I realize your anecdotal experiences move you, and I respect and appreciate that. But let's be perfectly clear. The most permanent thing a kid can go through is puberty, first of all. So when you deny a kid the opportunity to pause puberty, we're just talking, first of all, talking about puberty blockers.
Which straight kids do all the time.
All the time.
All the time.
Yes, since the 80s, kids have been prescribed puberty blockers for a variety of reasons. And the law you passed prevents that. So you steal from kids who would like to be able to pause the ability to further. Fewer than 3% of people who do any kind of transition regret it and go back. Fewer than 3%. Finally, I want to make this very clear. I'm not done.
Can I say that when it comes to puberty blockers, I don't know. Do you know many people who take puberty blockers?
But that's also not a question I've ever thought to ask anyone.
Have
So
you?
Could be a bunch of people around me have done it. Could be absolutely no one.
The only people I could think puberty blockers helps for the most part are women, because of the periods, which makes sense. Which makes sense. But I don't think I've ever heard of a guy taking puberty blockers. Let alone do I know any teenager or middle-aged, early 20s that they take pills like that. The only pills that I've ever seen anybody really take are antidepressants and all that type of stuff, but never puberty blockers. So when people are bringing up these conversations, it's really mind-boggling because you sit there and you're like, that's a thing? I thought that was trans exclusive. I thought that was puberty exclusive. You know what I mean? Because it makes more sense.
In all sorts of walks of life.
Yeah.
We're going to be able to meet every single one.
True.
You were so mean to everybody else who want to talk to you. My turn. There has been really robust standards of care laid out by all the leading medical associations that has been in existence for a long time, that is science-based, about guidelines for these things. But to be clear, the guidelines are very specific about this is supposed to be the parent's decision with their kid, with their medical provider. What you did was rob all those families of choices. Your opinion, because you believe you know better than science, you know better than parents, you know better than people who even do know themselves, you're going to prevent them from having options because you personally have a problem with something that a couple of people and some other people you're aware of knew.
It sounds
None
like
of them are
something within
statistically
himself.
significant. Maybe you've got dozens of people you know of, hundreds. That's a teeny tiny little sliver. You will never know or know of all of these people, and yet you've decided for them.
Were they talking about completely banning the puberty blockers, or were they just talking about people like kids that are just trying to take the puberty blockers without their parents' consent? Because he made a good point where it's like the parents, the kids, and the doctor. But with other experiences, at least when it comes to the trans community and stuff like that, a lot of it was spoken about kids wanting to take the parents out of the equation. Does that make sense?
Yes, but that's because a lot of the parents are extremely restrictive.
Right, but the reason why I say that it's something that matters is because at the end of the day, let's look at it this way. You don't want to give kid alcohol, right? But that's something that they want. What about those kids who play with lighters? You think you should let the kid play with the lighter?
I think they're gonna do it regardless of whether I, as an adult, let them.
Okay.
But I can at least make sure they know how to do it safely, and if they
They're gonna do it regardless, right?
Yeah.
But we have stores that prohibit the sale to kids for a reason. And in the same sense, if you're trying to eliminate the parent who is the legal guardian, you're stopping them from having the option to be able to guide the child in case the child is going through a phase. Because let's be honest, we've all had our phases, whether it be emo, goth, any number of things could be a quick tizzy or a quick fucking fantasy, right? Until we do it and then we're like, oh, I didn't want this, right? But as far as it goes with this puberty stuff, you're affecting your body on a large scale. And as well as these, affirming care stuff, gender affirming stuff, you're affecting the body on a degree that is non-reversible.
Isn't it that like a good chunk of the stuff for transitioning is like you have to take like multiple injections over the course of a long period of time? It's not short of the actual surgery itself. A good chunk of that takes so long. So you have
Right.
so long to decide of, yes, I want to do this 187%, or no, I don't, and I'm not sure. I'm gonna take it back a couple notches.
Yeah, well, they shortened that all the way down to 6 months now.
It is? Damn.
Yes. So you see how that could become a problem? Let's talk about tattoos, for example. Do you think you should have an 8-year-old be able to go out and get a tattoo?
Not a real one, but a fake one, sure.
A fake one, fine, but we're talking about real ones.
No, until you can understand
Do you-
permanence. and
That's
you
the
know
problem. A lot of the kids do not understand permanence. You get what I mean?
But yeah, that's why, I think, should
The
they,
parents should be involved.
under 18, should the person be able to fully, get up to the surgery? No.
But that's why I think that a lot of people were advertising for that there's no problem with doing it after 18. I think a lot of these problems that we're seeing in the media is based off of kids, not off of people who are past 18 years old.
I don't even most of the how many of the younger trans kids even want to go ahead and fully transition?
They don't, but they find the phase appeasing to their social standards and social norms within their classmates. Like they find a social hierarchy that comes with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but like, you know, the kids know it probably you to get a good couple seconds of jumping off a bridge, but you know you're still gonna hit the ground at some point. That's why you don't.
Well, that's the point of wanting to take away the puberty blockers and wanting to take away the gender affirmation shit, because the peer pressure. I think it definitely stems off of peer pressure. There's no way, no how that.
Farting could become a peer pressurable thing.
Right, but that's why certain things are accepted and certain things aren't. Like jumping off the bridge. It has long-term consequences, and I think that's what we really guard against.
And shame on you for it.
I think we all can agree, though, that even though he's passed legislation, over 18, you don't care what they do.
I don't care what they do.
You're just more so protecting the kids.
He's protecting
that
kids
are
he doesn't
going
have.
His laws more so protecting those kids that are just tomboys, tomgirls.
That's another thing. We forgot the classifications of tomboy, tomgirl, femboy, and all these different things. And while someone's in a phase, let them experience that phase. I'm not saying don't experience it. What I'm saying is figure out whether you are or aren't something, you know? Because we've lost, and I'm sorry to say this, but this is a personal preference of mine, but I haven't seen many tomboys. I used to think that tomboys were hot. You remember Avril Lavigne or whatever her name was? The See You Later Skater Boy or whatever girl? She was a tomboy, and I found her to be hot at the time. And I don't see many of those now. Now it's mostly goth girls, big girls that are goth, or like some form of kawaii anime motherfucker. And it's like, it's cool and all, but like, what happened to those? You know, like they're still people too, but you're throwing them into these categories when they necessarily don't fit. Just because someone's a little tomboyish doesn't mean that they're gay inherently. You know what I mean?
That are just they're being force-fed this idea like, oh, I'm gay, maybe I'm a girl, and then like they're just like pink. They like are more feminine and just oh, actually transition. And
I don't think it's that simple.
And I just hate that this is such an absolutist discussion on both sides, because it's like you guys are like, no, there's nothing. No, don't.
I'm not being absolute.
I'm not being absolute either.
Okay, but I just
don't put words
think,
in my mouth.
Okay,
I'm disappointed that someone
Can you let me
is
talk,
proud
please?
to sit
Can you
here
let me
and
talk?
pass a law that harms children
I got
when
it.
we know that our queer
we know your
community
point. We got it. We know your point.
is so harmed already.
All I'm saying is that your guys are not making space for the people who have gone through this process and regret it. I personally know someone in the same situation that you were in, and I'm not sitting here arguing for either side because I think this is a very nuanced discussion. It used to be a 2-year process. Now it's 6 months. Those things are changing because the capital
It used to be 2 years. Now it's 6 months. I wasn't lying about that.
and the motive behind it is now, which I'm sure that you guys on this side are against
You're good.
capitalistic, healthcare. That's pushing it. And those guidelines, yes. There's a lot of money to be made in gender-affirming care.
A lot of money to the
really?
doctors who are
1.6 million
prescribing it.
per child that gets on it. That's throughout their lifetime. That's how much that
There
farmer
are so
makes
many
from
other
it.
things.
And he's not lying about that, because let's look at the average prescription. It's like $20 for a bottle of like 100 pills of whatever you want, right? And then depending on how rare that thing is or how much in demand that is, it's going to skyrocket the price, right? So you have all these kids that are taking these puberty blockers that are probably 40, 35, maybe $50 a bottle, because of the fact that not something that is a necessity, should I say. And so you have these people, big companies, that are just taking advantage. And then you also have the breast surgery is about $10,000, the butt surgery is another 10, and all these different things that eventually they're going to look what they want to look like, but they spent over a lifetime's worth of money to accomplish. You get my drift?
That kids get that make people more money.
I understand that, but you're not leaving any room for nuance in this discussion.
Actually, I would argue that you guys aren't leaving room for nuance because you make a decision.
I never said a statement.
Well, okay,
on it.
I apologize. And for those of you that I have been mean to, I'm sorry. I love and respect all of you as people.
I don't think it's mean.
Nuance
think it's
is
a lot.
valuable, and that's why we leave it up to the parents and the medical professionals and the individuals who are making these decisions. There are people who get hair plugs and regret it. There are people who get nose jobs and regret it. There is no such thing.
we don't
There's
give
no,
hair
I'm not-
I'm going to say this. There's no such thing as something that you're not going to regret. However, there are certain things that are not life determining. You know what I mean? Like, you getting hair plugs is not going to change your life. Sorry, it sucks to say this, but you getting hair plugs and having fuller hair, or getting hair plugs are like hair implant. And you having more head of hair or less head of hair is not going to completely change or ruin your life. You know what I mean? Doing a nose job is not going to inherently ruin your life. It's going to ruin your nasal cavity, maybe, or maybe even make it better. But it's not going to ruin your sense of smell. Or maybe it can, I don't know. But it's not going to extremely change your life. Now, however, the sex change is. Because if you go back on it, like they said a minute ago in the thing, it's going to push you away from the LGBTQ, and it's going to push you away from the gender normative, the normal fucking being straight or whatever. They said that, I forget what the terminology was, the heterosexual norm. You're going to be taken away and you're not going to find a single group. That is damaging, psychologically damaging. Whether you have hair or not, it's not going to damage your social life. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not trying to marginalize or excuse or make people who are bald feel like shit. I'm not trying to. I'm sorry, guys. I love you guys. Chrome domes for life. Anyways, no, it's just you're trying to compare two things that aren't exactly the same.
Hugs and nose jobs to kids.
Like kids can get nose jobs, can get breast jobs. Of course, kids are getting this all the time.
Oh, he's done. She's waiting on us.
Sorry, I think it sounds like we're not really going to find a middle ground between some of you.
We will have to hug.
But can I actually sort of like wrap it up into a middle ground moment?
Yeah.
Go for it.
I think this is exactly going back to the point of why there is a separation, because it's a very lived, different experience than just being a cisgendered gay man. That was the whole point of the prompt.
This is everyone's opinion, and no matter like how frustrating it can be, going and attacking people, like it was just a lot. And if that was me, like I would be so mad and I would just go off. So, you know, I commend you for really like holding your composure.
And I just want to apologize because that's absolutely right. And I broke my own rule in being fired up in the things I said to you, and I'm sorry. That's not how you deserve to be treated.
And I ultimately do side with my liberal brothers that I don't agree with the legislation, but
It's not malicious.
I see where you're coming from, and that exists, and people that live here, they have that. But I do disagree with legislation, but I don't necessarily have to personally attack you.
I'm gonna say this, and absolutely love middle ground Jubilee for these types of videos, where they can grab two opposing viewpoints and have a conversation, and at the end of the conversation, sit there and acknowledge each other. And I wish we could do that more in VR.
Can we just all bake cookies and watch cartoons?
But what if I don't want to bake cookies? What if I want to shoot guns instead?
Then shoot guns. I wish.
Can I shoot guns at the cookies?
Yeah, we'll make some cookies to be shot.
I love it. For the viewers, if you guys ever want to actually like come to a middle ground in VR style, let me know in the comments below, and then we'll try to we'll try to make that happen. Even though it's gonna probably be a nightmare. Am I right?
Yes.
I still think it'd be entertaining to watch. Yeah, VR chat's fucking first middle grounds with virtual paradox. That'll be something to see.
Drag shows are too sexual for minors.
Yeah.
I think it's important to...
Actually, this is the one prompt where I might go against you on when it comes to the gay rights on that one.
There's not as a gay rights. I mean, there's just a lot of dick jokes.
Oh, okay. So what about actual sexuality, though, outside of the joking?
With that? Nah, it's like watching Ursula and Little Mermaid or Mushu.
Okay, because I think that depending on what kind of drag show we're talking about here, there's differences in exposure.
I don't know much with drag shows.
I've been to a couple of drag shows, actually. They're quite entertaining. They're somewhat fun. It really depends if you're willing to be touched or not, because they are handsy. But I will say this, depending on the show that you go to and depending on how family oriented they are, you're going to get varying degrees. Now, I've seen one in a theater before, and that was very explicit, and I didn't quite enjoy it because, again, it was very on the sexual side. But there was a couple of bar ones that I went to that were actually super friendly, super energetic, super entertaining. Loved it. It was absolute blast. And I feel like they should strive for that type of middle ground where you're understanding that these are parents, these are adults, they want to hear the sexualized part, but they don't actually want to see it, you know? So, I don't know. I don't think that drag shows have gotten that far. I think that, if anything, the pride part has gotten worse than the actual drag shows have been.
Not put a blanket statement over everything.
I was just going to say that.
Because I know already when they step forward, we're going to get the Miss Doubtfire example, and then it's going to be like, oh, well, why is that okay for kids and drag is not? I love a good drag show. I frequent them all the time. Most of them are not appropriate for children. Most of them. Not all, but most of them. There are instances that are circulating on social media that represent a small...
Oh my god, your rats are propagating even more. I swear to God. At the end of this, if you become a rat king, I'm going to yeet you with a broom.
Minority of drag shows where kids are present and then it's over-sexualized, people pleasuring themselves, wearing outfits that are representative of genitalia. For that reason, I would say that drag typically is not appropriate for children. Do I think it needs to be legislated? No, because I don't trust the government to legislate it responsibly, but I do trust parents to use their better judgment and know that when something is typically sexual, it most likely will be, so just don't take your kids there.
And I disagree with when there were folks trying to ban drag. You can't do that. We have the First Amendment for free expression. I think drag should be able to be celebrated and just kind of dress however you want. I think it is good, I think it's great, but then sometimes there are instances where it's not, and like, we have to talk about that rather than being ban drag or no, it's completely safe. I think we need to have that middle ground.
I think that they're making a great point here. They need to stop dragging everything into extremism, and I think a lot of people need to stop doing the extremism and start learning what balance is.
Stupid mentality.
Yeah, that's why I was saying at the gay pride events, they need to stop being extreme when it comes to like displaying their gay love and all that stuff. Like, I have nothing against it, like I said before, but there's a point that shouldn't be crossed where my child is seeing a fucking bareback booty of a man. I mean, let alone of a woman, but like of a man.
I mean, that's just going to a beach and there's a person in a bikini. That's a whole lot of ass.
Right, but you know that at the beach because why? It's super fucking hot, but not in the middle of the street, you know?
And Arizona gets really fucking hot. Same here in Charleston.
I swear, I feel like you're always trying to look for the exception to the rule. I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to eat your rats.
No, they're my children.
Well, you know what I mean. There's common decency, there's public decency, and I think that that's something that we need to learn the balance of. At least when it comes to these newly reformed communities, you know?
Yeah, but no one's ever really gonna agree on anything.
But they need to stop taking it to these extremes. It's the extremes.
What does that mean? As a child who wore my sister's clothes, I wore my mom's makeup, I put on their heels, I did all the things, I just explored my, who I was. Feeling comfortable expressing yourself and being around drag could be like, for a kid like me, if I saw that it was okay to dress up and nobody was like shaming me, maybe that could be helpful, but that doesn't change the fact that the majority of drag shows that we see today are sexualized.
We have to even start with drag as where its origin comes from. Here it happens mostly in bars. That's where these queens are getting their training. I myself, in my time, have helped a drag queen organize a show that was family friendly. And I use the quotations because she actually took it out of a bar. She's like, we can't make something family friendly and still produce it in a place where they serve alcohol. So she actually ended up renting a theater, asking people to pay for tickets, and she put on a produced show where they came in from backstage and they would come on stage like you would expect to see a Broadway show. And she made sure that she told anybody that was going to come in and perform, you don't grab your breast, you don't grab your crotch, you don't shake, you don't do. We have to make sure that it has to be available and consumable for the general public, because we don't know who's going to be walking through our doors, and we have a responsibility and a duty to make sure that we don't confuse children, we don't upset people, and if we want this show to be a success, we have to make it palatable for as many.
See, they made a great point. You have to make it palatable for everyone. It can't just be for your select group. Now, if you're doing stuff like this on YouTube or stuff on the web, who gives a fuck? Do whatever it is that you want, because at the end of the day, there's only going to be a certain people that are going to traffic through your videos or are going to sit around and watch your videos, right? But when it's in public space, you got to keep a public mind, a public opinion on it. You know what I mean?
People as possible.
Okay.
I see you're nodding your head, so we'll keep moving.
We don't say the same thing about pop stars. It's literally the same thing, and I think that it's hyper myopic, zoned in because we are queer. It's an easy way to go after us. I don't think most people that don't like drag shows or angry about drag shows actually care about drag shows or have ever even been to one. I think when you go, you said majority. I've not been to all of the drag shows. I can't speak for the majority, but I've been to my fair share in New York and LA, like places where the queens turn out. They put on a show. It is not about being sexual. It's about being smart, funny, witty. They make their costumes. They do their makeup. It is art entertaining. I don't think they get enough respect for what they do.
And it's sad that drag is kind of being painted that way for everyone when there are a lot of people that are doing beautiful work. But what do you think when it does
I think people
cross the line
who are
of being
inherently afraid of drag as an art form then go to the one thing that they can, which is like, the sexualization of the minor. But which I think
such a dog whistle.
They're not taking down all the naked statues that are like all over Italy and in the Catholic Church, like naked babies. If you're gonna say, well, none of the like sexualization of children and none of the inappropriateness, then you have to go after it all.
And I will get with you guys on that point where it is hyper-focused on the drag queens when it is a bigger conversation of what is acceptable and not acceptable for children, especially pop stars. When I've been to Beyonce's tour 4 times this year so far.
Lucky
and
you.
You need to go. While I'm there, I love the experience. I love the show. But
What?
4 times in 1 year. That's a lot of times to go to something.
Yeah, that must be a cushion job if you're able to do that and pay for
Holy
it. Yeah.
shit.
I'm also fighting in my head, being like a super big fan, but I'm like, okay, this is really inappropriate for children. But no one's talking about that
because it's Beyonce. Because it's Beyonce.
And there's so much footage out there of adult women
that's
with
the whole
their minor
conversation.
daughters.
It's Beyonce.
Well, yeah, but I don't think that's a very blanketed excuse. It's Beyonce.
I know, but it's a really stupid excuse. I think it's funny.
Well, a lot of what we push out there is an excuse. Like, think about it. I mean, if we're gonna sit here and not acknowledge the fact that most of VR chat is sexual as it is, we'll never get anywhere. Like, everyone wants to agree on it, but then they have their excuses, their reasons for doing what they do, and it being on VR, and the same old classical thing, well, it's the internet, right? Well, if it's as the internet as it is, and as people say as it is, then why is it that we can't see people do what it is that they want without being canceled? You get what I mean? You can't just throw an excuse that isn't... Huh?
I don't see what that has to do with VR fucking. I am confused.
Well, the reason why I brought it up is because there are people that are still trying to fuck in the black cat, in public, black cat and stuff. But you get the point. It's like, if we're willing to excuse one thing, and then when somebody comes in with almost the same level of excuse, and you tell them, no, that's not viable, then we need to be able to do that about everything. But people are selective, and they're always going to be selective. So this is always going to be a nuanced topic, especially in VR spaces.
Going to a Justin Bieber concert and being out of their minds about him being in any way sexual. They respond when he does a sexual thing. This is a norm. It's just that in this case, it's about queer people, and norms don't get to apply to us.
Right, and I think that just art in general has the potential to, blur the lines of what's socially acceptable and what isn't. That's what makes it art. So it's important to remember that.
Can I just say that as much as they say that it's a norm for other people, but not a norm for queer people, can I just say that there is a buttload of women that look at the yaoi and Yuri and other shit like that, and they find that as a norm, or they fantasize about us guys doing each other and shit?
Yeah, you got them giant fucking hands.
Yeah, so why is it that we want to say that it's not applicable only to queer people, but then again, we sit here and flip the script back on them and they got no answer? You know what I mean? It's always this double standard shit that people like to make that I just don't see. And I'm not saying that I don't see it in a malicious way. I mean, like, I don't see enough evidence from people that are actually out here trying to push gay being bad, or all I see is assholes. You know what I mean? Like, people that are dicks. And then I also see dicks on the other side who are trying to fucking control people who are just trying to live their life.
Anyone can be a dick.
Yeah, I don't think that is exclusive towards someone's sexuality or someone's gender or someone's ethnicity.
No different than like autistic people you can be an asshole and also autistic or gay or poor or a donkey. Like,
right.
You can't, it's not one or the other. You can be both. You can be absolute scum and also gay.
I feel like a lot of what's been going around is that people want to put these labels as a means of saying that I'm righteous, and then commit all these like bad acts of being dicks. And it's like people want to say that it's all about intention, and then they also want to say that it's not about intention, because these people will fucking go to comedy club and say I don't like that joke, and it's like, well, then why are you there? You know what I mean? Like, you purposely put yourself in a situation that you felt uncomfortable in.
Oh no, the consequences of my own actions.
Right. I think accountability has since left the building since we decided to put all these labels forth and make them
Everything went
excuse.
to shit after they shot that goddamn gorilla.
Okay.
All forms of art, and I speak on this on my platforms too. When I have kids, they're not going to Hooters. I'm sorry. I'm not taking them there. I'm also not taking them to a drag show, and I'm not going to take them to a Sam Smith concert either. So, and that's not because that art is bad. It's because I'm not comfortable with my kids being there. But if the government is in the business
of question for you.
Yes.
You said that you feel like you maybe could have experienced something that was good for you by seeing drag when you were little.
Right.
And then you just said you wouldn't take your kids to
Because the majority of drag shows that I've seen, I wouldn't find appropriate. I'm not going to run the risk. I'm not saying that there isn't a drag show that would be good for a child. I never said that.
See, I think what he's trying to say is that I'm trying to be preventative towards certain things. That doesn't mean that those things are inherently bad, is that what's been shown and showcased can be taken in a bad way. But yeah, no, just being preventative, it shouldn't be viewed negatively. Just because you're trying to be smart and act smart and do what you think is best, it shouldn't be viewed in such a negative connotation just because you may or may not think that someone's trying to be, transphobic or homophobic or whatever fuck like that. Because at the end of the day, that person inherently probably isn't. Like myself, I have no problem against people of any kind at all, whether it be race, sexuality, or whatever have you. And I still wouldn't put my kids in front of such situations, mainly because I don't want them to be confused and lose track or sight of what matters and what's important. They can self-discover that stuff, which is what's the premise to begin with. They need to discover on their own time if they want to be straight, gay, whatever have you. You know what I mean? They need to find that out by trial and error, not by being shown this stuff and then them going out and saying, oh, it's because everybody else did it that I'm doing it, you know? Like myself, I slept with a man before. I'm no shame in saying that. But I am straight. I slept with a man and I found out that naturally I didn't like it. But I gave it a fair shot. And that wasn't because I had gay friends or straight friends or whatever the fuck like that. That was something I wasn't paying attention to. I needed to find out on my own terms whether or not that was the case. And I feel like that's the root of the problem here.
I'm saying that from my experience going to drag shows, I'm not going to run the risk of taking my kid and putting them in an environment that I don't deem appropriate.
Do you want kids?
I mean,
yes,
we have a responsibility to police our own community. If a drag queen comes out from backstage into a bar and someone has their child, that drag queen should be like, stop, whose child is this? Why is this child in this bar? Under 21? Excuse me, they're going to lose their alcohol license, especially in California.
Although I do think that there are wonderful drag shows that are amazing for adults, also may not be appropriate for children, but it's not inherently the art form that determines
I agree. Yeah, I mean, the vast majority of drag shows happen in...
Yeah, see, it's not the art form that determines that. It's the people who participate in it and do what they do. You know what I mean?
Who's bringing kids into a bar anyway?
You'd be surprised, especially if some bars are accepting of...
in bars?
Yeah, I know.
But I think it's really important to note that the argument about whether or not a certain art form is inappropriately sexual or not is a tale as old as time. I think drag is being targeted because it pings that part of people who aren't sure what's okay. Adults take their young kids to Hooters all the time. Adults show their kids R-rated movies all the time, but those are their personal choices. And here's the thing. It is not unknown what's developmentally appropriate. The American Psychological Association, the American Association of Pediatrics, there's tons of well-researched guidance on this. This is not an open question. There's no need for these laws, but also it's not accurate to say that most of them are sexualized because how in the world would you be able to empirically prove that?
Totally.
I would date a trans man.
Every trans person has their own experience of what trans is. If that trans man still had downstairs, then sure. Because that's the reason I'm gay. I'm a gay man because I'm a male with male body parts that likes male body parts.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Here's a good question. How come in VR we sit here and we acknowledge these type of things, but at the same time, well, at least anecdotally from what I've experienced, I've asked my trans friends, right? Like, how often did you date a guy or a woman, or even if they were transitioning from man to woman, and how often were they in a male avatar or female avatar and stuff like that? And 9 times out of 10, I always get the same type of responses that 9 times out of 10, their partner was wearing a female avatar, they were female presenting, they didn't have the genitalia, or they did. And it's like, at what point in time do you start questioning whether or not you're straight or gay due to the fact that they presented a certain type of genitalia? You know what I mean? Or they presented a certain type of sexuality. And you can't deny that if, for example, you dated a lot of guys, but all those guys were fucking wearing female avatars, that you at one point can't say that you don't prefer women over men because you didn't want to date men. And I mean men by the definition of like genitals, not by the definition of identity, you know? So this is where people start to get lost and confused in that respect. And I think that's something that VR community needs to start bringing up up in a sense, not to question them in a negative connotation, but more in like, can you specify what is that you do like and don't like? That way it don't offend you.
I like it, the penis.
Right. If you do like the vagina, why don't you just say openly that you prefer women?
I like it.
Why do you feel condemned because you just like coochie? You know what I mean? And is it because you don't have access to said coochie that you decide to go for men? Like, realistically, it's the whole prison experiment. When you get locked in with guys for 20, 30, 40 years, at one point or another, you're going to want that male booty, because booty is booty, whether or not you're straight or not.
Got a butthole.
So if you're stuck with the only options of being able to communicate with guys, and those guys happen to have your sexual preference in mind, which is wearing a female avatar with titties and no penis, are you actually gay or are you still straight? You see what I mean? How the confusion can happen, and how somehow these people get thrown into transgenderism or being gay or becoming a femboy and all these different things. Like, realistically, what are you? And have you actually asked yourself that question, rather than getting pulled along by your peers and submitting yourself to the peer pressure? You know what I'm saying with that?
Yeah.
Would that change, let's say if you met someone and you were attracted to them based off of what they looked like in clothes, and then you found out that their genitalia didn't match what you had expected or assumed, would you still not be interested in them?
It would hurt, because I would be interested in them. That's happened before. I can be interested in a person, but at the end of the day, I'm gay. So if I go downstairs and there's nothing there, or there is a female body part, I can't perform.
See, he says something good there too. It's like, at the end of the day, in VR chat, we don't really have to worry about that, because it's just a matter of a toggle, right?
Yeah.
But unfortunately, a lot of these relationships do fall through, because at the end of the day, they can't perform, because now you're dealing with the realities and certainties where that person's got a penis, that person doesn't have titties, that person doesn't have a vagina, they have a cock, you know? And it's like, how do we draw those lines in VR, especially considering the fact that our population count is growing the way that it is? I mean, VR is the future. It's going to be the future. We've seen an increase of 10. We've seen an increase of 10,000 people within the last fucking few years now. It's bound to happen, and if we don't set some normalized standards, and what I mean by normal is that all these things considered, not just heterosexual norm, but like everything that is considered but properly, and not just thrown around because of labels.
So then you wouldn't date a trans man, would you? Trans man is woman transitioning to man.
Oh shit! See, it's so confusing.
Yeah, so it's like you wouldn't, because if they didn't.
It's trans man or trans woman?
Trans man.
Which is?
Woman transition to man.
Oh,
That's
shit,
why
no,
it's
I would
trans
not.
man.
No.
Okay.
You can turn around if you want.
Okay, yeah, no.
Okay.
So, reset.
I think for myself, I've never had the opportunity, I would say the privilege. Personally, it is one of those things where, like, what I look for in a partner is really what they bring to the table in terms of like intellectual conversation and just the way they make me feel. It doesn't really matter what you have going on. If we have good chemistry up here, like, that's not gonna be a problem at all, and it shouldn't be a problem, and no one should really be conformed or confined to what they have in their pants.
I was dating someone and they were transgender, they didn't tell me, and we're like 2 months in, and we actually decided to actually do something. I don't think that's fair for me though, because you're not giving me the opportunity if I still want to continue, because that's important. So that's why I don't blame anyone or have any animosity if someone doesn't want to date a trans person, because they still have their preference, and if they are gay, it's not just gender that's important, it's also their sex that's important too, and we don't want to disregard sex as well and what their sexual identity is, because that is important to someone else.
I also think, just based on the idea that you're talking about with sex, there's so much more to sex than just penetration or sucking on something specific. I think that there's a lot of different ways to enjoy sex and being sexual with your partner. I also think, for us to sit here and think about the trans experience is completely unfair, because we don't go through it. Right. And so for someone who is trans to think about disclosure is safety. For me personally, I think that love is such a special thing, and to be able to find it in any capacity would be a gift. And I think to close yourself off from possibly meeting someone who you are physically attracted to because of what just is.
I can understand his premise and where he's coming from, but at the end of the day, I want to say that we are as simplistic as he's trying to disregard. in the sense that there's going to be plenty of women that would rather date someone who's richer. There's plenty of men that would rather date someone with bigger titties or bigger ass, right? And some of these things may matter to an individual, and they can't be discredited just because you say that love is love. Because if that was the case, we would see a lot more people that, for example, are dating would date down. You know what I mean? You'd see a lot more people that would say, oh, you have DID or you have a mental illness, I'll still date you because you love me for me. You're going to end up dealing with those consequences, just like you would with someone being broke, with just like we would with somebody not having enough girth or length or any of these different things. You know what I meant? Girth or length, okay? You're going to have people that love is not just based off of emotion. I know people want to say that it is, but it really, really isn't. Love is based off of a plethora of different things. It could be from as simple as just a partner acknowledging the fact that you're going to sneeze before you even do sneeze and they hand you a handkerchief, something as small as that. Or love could be the way that they fuck you from behind or some shit. Like they just reach that spot for you. You know what I mean? Even though the length isn't different from your average Joe or whatever. It's love is too much of a broad definition to say that none of these things aren't a part of it, if that makes sense. That love is such a large target that it involves these other things as well. Instead of looking at it from a point A to point B, I think people need to look at love as more of a big dart chart, and that bullseye is not in the dead center, but in a specific spot that any individual dictates, you know?
Is in their pants is really doing yourself a disservice.
Can we go around and say what we love about each other?
I think we all have a sexuality for a reason that's not discounting the lives of trans people. Like, I think they have their
We're
rights,
almost
they
near the
should
end.
Be alive. Like, that's totally fine. Respect to them. But I think at least some of us here are gay for a reason. Our sexuality is reduced to what's between the pants. That's literally the only reason I'm a gay man.
We're talking about like what's in someone's pants.
Yeah.
Would you date a trans woman who still had her penis?
I'd be open to it.
So would that make you still gay though, if she presents as a woman?
It would make me...
Make you bi with an exception?
Well, your
Make me
definition of gay is
yeah.
defined by being attracted
Yeah,
to
just be like, I just want,
a penis.
that would be a very, very feminine man.
We see this a lot in VR chat especially, where someone will identify as non-binary but then straight still. You know what I'm saying? Moxie, I'm trying to coax you into talking to me, sweetheart. You're here with me. I'm not doing this by myself.
Sorry.
I feel like the rats are just taking over your brain at this point. Can we say that? Are you now part of the Rat King community?
I live rat free.
No, you don't. You live rat on.
Get rat on, loser.
No, but like for real though, what is your take on it? Like, because you do have a lot of people who identify as this, that, and the other, and then it doesn't necessarily match to their like sexuality or identification or whatever have you.
Fuck, man, I
So
don't
what
give
do
a
we...
shit what people call themselves, what people feel like they are. Just don't be a douche.
Okay.
When it comes to men, obviously there's what's in your pants, but them transitioning to a man, they're still identified as a man and they still present that masculinity that most men, if you want to be honest, most cis men can't produce.
Right, yeah.
So if me wanting to date or open to dating a trans man, does that not make me gay?
I would say that you're bi with an attraction to masculinity.
Or pansexual.
These conversations are so tough for me because it's like, I truly believe that you love who you love and it doesn't matter. And we categorize things because that's natural for the brain, but there are nuances and there are exceptions. Honey, I'm as gay as the sun is hot, but I like... You know
Right.
what?
Right.
I like
I
what I
wanna
like,
feel
and I'm
it
not
slap in
going
my
to
face. I'm so
invalidate
sorry.
somebody else's sexuality by saying, oh, you're bigoted for not wanting to do this, because that, and it kind of goes back to our other discussion, where the TQ and then the LGB, sometimes those issues can intermingle and then cause other people to feel invalidated just because I don't necessarily want to date somebody with a vagina.
I find this conversation interesting because to me, I don't see the point in it. Because like, we can argue that someone who is a gay man will date a trans man. It's like, who cares? That's up to them. I know that we have different.
Thank you.
Right.
I think it just sucks though that gay men are being called transphobic for not wanting to date a trans man.
Well,
I think that's a little too
I
far.
think we can all agree that's wrong.
That's
I don't think that's transphobic at all. If that's not your preference or if that's not who you like, then that's fine.
Well, okay, why does it become acceptable when it's gay people doing it, and why doesn't it become acceptable for someone who is straight?
Man, if I like cookies, I like cookies. That doesn't mean cakes or pies are bad. That doesn't mean I don't like cakes or pies. I just fucking like cookies, and if I have the option of cookies, I'm gonna get cookies.
I swear to God, you and your cookie analogy, are you trying to feed your rat family? Do we need to have an intervention?
But no, but like, my point still stands. I'm not insulting or saying that the others are less, or that they're worse, or that I think they're inferior. I just fucking like cookies. Which... I am allowed to like cookies. You're allowed to fucking hate cookies. Cookies can be your absolute worst. You will never choose them, even if they were the last sweet thing on earth.
Yeah.
Both opinions are okay.
I think so too. And I think that once we can get past like these stupid rhetorics of nonsensical stuff, we will actually be able to get along better. And I think that it's not just one side that has to worry about anything. I think it's a collective issue that we as a human race need to confront these topics eventually and actually get down to the root of it and become a community again, because we're dividing each other into smaller communities, but we're not becoming a large community as a whole, you know?
Cookies just taste good.
Do you have any final thoughts before we end the video here?
No, that was it.
That was it, you and your cookies and your
My
rat
cookie
family on your fucking
analogies
forehead?
are wonderful. Everything can be traced back to cookies.
I think you have a cookie problem. I'm not gonna lie. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this Jubilee video and react video with, well, my cookie obsessed friend here who seemed a little MIA on that fucking candy and other shit. But hopefully we'll get more people who are interested in doing these react videos with me. If you're interested in participating, there should be a Discord link somewhere along the screen right now, right here somewhere. And if not, they should be one in the description below. Like, comment, subscribe, whatever it is that you guys want to do. Make sure to follow us on all the other platforms.
What does the werewolf YouTuber say?
What the fuck?
Make sure to like and subscribe.
All right, we'll see you guys in the next video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Bye bye.